My name is Lon Safko, co-author of the Social Media Bible published by John Wiley & Sons, the largest book ever written on the subject of social media. And today we're here with David Nour, author of Relationship Economics, Defining Business Acumen, also published by John Wiley & Sons. And we'll be speaking today about relationship economics and the value of social networks. So let's get started. So David, tell our listeners a little bit about your background and why you wrote the book Relationship Economics.
Sure, Lon, I appreciate you having me. The background is an interesting one, and that is really a culmination of both my personal and professional background. Real quickly, personally, I'm originally from Iran. I came to the States in 1981. Didn't know anybody, literally didn't speak a word of English, had $100 to my name and a suitcase. So very early on, I had to learn how to adapt and how to survive in this great country. And I think only in America can a first generation immigrant really get a chance and be blessed to have some of the opportunities I've had over the years. From a professional standpoint, recently I spent a number of years at a private equity firm. Before that, president of a startup, and really had a chance to, through my career, look at a lot of different companies. And what I noticed consistently was the ones that outpaced their competitors or competitive peers weren't the ones necessarily with the best products or services. Mm-hmm. The ones that consistently and systematically thrived were the ones who built these amazing relationships, and they nurtured them, and they were very disciplined in how they did that. And great, board members walk you into great companies, help you attract great employees, which just becomes this momentum wheel that they learn to leverage. And I said there's got to be something there. So having read over 100 books on this, collaborating with about a dozen or so PhDs around the country, we came up with this idea of relationship economics, what we called the art and science of relationships.
Wow. And that's really true. I mean, if you look at all of the successful businesses, they're built on excellence, of course, but they're also built on the networks, the trust of their customers.
That's exactly right. And we just real quickly we identified, two camps, the art and the science. And the art is an interesting one, right? How to introduce yourself, how to get a business card, how to, quote-unquote, work a room or a conference. And there's a lot of material in the market about that, and that's certainly important. What we found is nobody measures the stuff. Nobody says, what's my return on that relationship investment? Nobody says, who are my 50 most strategic relationships that I really need to pragmatically, systematically invest in for an extraordinary return? So we've come up with ideas like the relationship scorecard and the relationship value pyramid and indices and matrix and all avenues of trying to help you prioritize your most valuable relationships.
That's a really good point, because a lot of people just have this tendency to collect as many business cards as they can and just kind of shotgun approach, follow up on all of them simultaneously. But if you really analyze it, isn't it like 10% of your customers are generating 90% of your business?
Yeah, it really is. And the fundamental thought process is you don't have enough, none of us have enough bandwidth to invest in everybody equally. Mm-hmm. So if you really believe relationships are an investment, how do you? I mean, the million-dollar question becomes, on any given day, you could call 20 people. You could engage 50 people. Which 20? Mm-hmm. And how do you know? And again, if nothing else, Six Sigma taught me that you can't possibly improve something you don't measure. Mm. And the fact that we all know, and again, for the Relationship Economics book, I interviewed 1,000 managers, directors, executives.
Wow.
Without exception, every single one of them attributed their personal and professional success to relationships. Without exception, none of them measured it. None of them could go back and say, here are the 50 most strategic relationships that were instrumental to my success in the last 10 years, the last 20 years.
That's excellent. Geez. So actually that leads right into the first question, is if someone came up to you and really didn't understand what you meant by relationship economics and social networks, and they read your book, what does your book tell them to do first? What's their first step? How do they start evaluating?
Yeah, it's most people, when they either struggle with a challenge or a dilemma or problem, They think of what should we do and how should we do it. Very few people, start asking the who questions. Who do we need? Who do we know? Can we start identifying some of our most valuable relationships as not just tactically, but strategically? How can we create access to and an opportunity with someone who can accelerate our ability to get things done? Just very quickly, Harvard Business Review wrote on this topic a number of months back as well. It talked about really, in essence, three types of relationships. First is your personal, right? These are your friends. These are your golf partners. These are your poker friends. These are people who like you, warts and all. They know you, they like you. Next is your functional relationships. People you work with, because you have to. These are customers. These are suppliers. These are perhaps board members. These are those who you, in essence, engage to do your function, do your role, deliver your role. First two are easy. First two, most people get. There's some very key attributes and nuances in the book about each of those. But the third one is the one that most people ignore, and that is your strategic relationships. Strategic relationships, by definition, elevate your thinking. They elevate perspective to a whole different level. And let me give you a very specific example.
Please.
If your focus is to generate revenue, let's just say, back of the napkin, you generated $10 million revenue last year. Strategic relationships are the types of individuals and types of extremely valuable relationships who can get you to 50 to 100 million in revenue. If you're trying to reduce employee attrition, if you're trying to extend alliance relationships, strategic relationships bring not an incremental value add, but an exponential value add to what you're trying to do. So that's just a couple of the examples. And again, how to be real disciplined about identifying these individuals. This is much more than networking. This really is networking efficiently, networking effectively, building and nurturing relationships, as I said earlier, for this extraordinary return that most people can't fathom.
That's interesting. So we're taking an analytical approach on our relationships to analyze the value of each one of them and how we could leverage that to recognize exponential returns.
And that's exactly right. And again, the basic example I share with individuals, teams, organizations is, you have three types of networkers or relationship builders, right? Givers. God bless Mother Teresa. They give altruistically. They give because they have these enormous hearts, and that's what they get joy out of. Unfortunately, most of us can't afford to just be altruistic givers. We have mortgages, and we have P&Ls, and we have other obligations. Number two is takers, right? We've all known this type.
Yeah.
And they call you. They want something. My least favorite is people who look for a job. Do you have a job? I need a job. Do you know anybody who's got a job? I'm going to need a job. Once they find a job, not only they stop all this quote-unquote networking,
right,
but they forget everybody who helped them get there till 3 years from now when they call you back. Take one guess at what they want.
Next job.
Another job, right?
Right.
How likely are you to help them? Yeah, how likely are you to help them? Well, I actually call them on it. John, what happened to the introductions I made for you 3 years ago? And when was the last time you called to see how I'm doing? Right?
Good point.
So givers, takers, and the last one is investors. Investors are systematic. Investors are disciplined. Investors absolutely take a more analytical, just to this art that we all know it's important, but very few people think about it as a very clear market differentiator, a very clear opportunity to turn a problem customer into a raving fan of a customer. Very few think of it as a strategic asset to reduce attrition. Just to give you an idea, we've identified an accelerated traction in terms of an idea that's backed by someone who has influence. We call it return on influence. Why? Because the individuals, by the way, this has nothing to do with their title, the individuals who have influence have this enormous ability to engage and just that influence others, often without authority.
This is really true, and I could name several of them that I know personally. That's true.
There you go. And yet most of us ignore them because they're 3 or 4 levels deep on our traditional org charts, if you think of within the organization. or we ignore them in a sales or business development or project management function because they couldn't possibly be important to this initiative. Mm-hmm. And that's where the mistake lies, in ignoring the highly influential people that may not have the title, may not have the corner office.
That's a really good point, because anytime I'm looking for help with something, or anytime I'm trying to spread the word or evangelize something, those are the people that I go to first, because they are the most effective, because their social networks, their trusted networks, are bigger than my own.
I'll give you another asset of
Please.
These highly influential people. They accelerate their ability to influence others, and the influenced become then this viral effect. Think about it. You go and you see a movie. Mm-hmm. Well, you may not be Roger and Ebert, but you saw the movie, you have friends, you tell 50 other friends about it, right? Yeah. And it drives awareness, it drives that market buzz, it drives that pull, if you will, for that particular movie. Well, ideas work the exact same way. Initiatives within corporations work the exact same way. There's certain individuals who are influential, but the influence can also become very proactive, resource to spread around those ideas and initiatives and really help them get traction.
So influencers are really viral, and because they're so viral, that what the information that they spread even spreads faster than just casual conversations with others outside of influencers.
That's exactly right. So think of a traditional organization chart, and then conversely, think of something we call a relationship dynamic chart, where it maps not just the hierarchical position in a company, but the source of information flow.
Cool.
The source of influence, the source of a return on your relationship investments.
Boy, that is really good information. You're absolutely right. What if, again, the novice walks up to you and they're talking about relationship economics? What if they got started? What are the pitfalls? What do they have to watch out for? What isn't obvious when they start making this analysis?
Sure. One of them, as we talked about, is there's several misnomers and misperceptions about relationships. One is that it's purely an external thing, right? When you talk to a lot of people about relationships, they automatically think it's a sales or marketing thing. Yeah. A lot of the work we do with the clients like Siemens and Disney and Intercontinental Hotels and KPMG and Deloitte, just to name a few, is as much focused on their intra-company or intra-firm relationships that are often as critical to your success as the external ones. So unfortunately, a lot of people literally forget or deprioritize their intra-company relationships. That's number one. Number two is this idea that relationships are a soft skill. Well, just like selling, there's an art and a science. We've proven that relationships, there's an art and a science. And it's critical that you really understand and you leverage and you maximize your proficiency, your effectiveness in both. So I'm not advocating you don't need to learn how to engage people at an event or how to introduce yourself or how to be interesting. By all means, you could be the most brilliant person. If you're abrasive, you're just not going to get anywhere.
That's a good point.
By the same token, there should be some discipline around this process, if you will.
Well,
the third area is...
Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely. And again, I tell people, I'm envious of what I call people magnets, right? Mm-hmm. You go places and they instantaneously attract a bunch of other people around them.
True.
Well, then there's the rest of us. The rest of us actually have to work at this. And I tell them, it's like a muscle. You've heard this old analogy. The more you get out there and get engaged and the more interesting you become, the easier, believe it or not, this gets. And you become an object of interest. You become a person that others will seek out and others want to get to know. And it really does make the whole thing of getting out there and network, which, by the way, is one letter away from not working, more interesting, much more engaging, much more fruitful for individuals, teams, and organizations.
Yeah, and of course, with the Social Media Bible, I'm focused on the social media aspects and the social networking. But that's really what we're talking about. The social media tool. Social media is really just a set of tools that really kind of helps the concepts that you're developing in the relationship economics book.
That's exactly right. And we work with a lot of clients and teams around what is your social networking strategy.
Right.
Because if I understand the purpose in which you're trying to build an online community, an online network, then we can start describing, then we can start picking out what are the right tools, what are the most relevant tools, what are the most effective tools to really deploy that strategy around.
That is a great observation.
And a lot of the social media applications, they're very capable. They're very capable, but they tend to be niche players. They tend to be really have a core competency in maybe a handful of areas. Well, just one size doesn't fit all. When you talk about very broad base of companies or teams trying to do a very broad base of goals and objectives, then you really have to think about how do I either use multitude of tools or platforms, or how do I work with them, custom build one that really fits what I'm trying to do.
That's a really good point. They are very niche oriented. What success stories? Is there anything specific using this type of relationship economic that's been applied? Can you think of something?
Yeah, actually a division of a group within one of the large professional service firms. If you think of one of the big four, has been able to double their revenues in the last 18 months in working with us.
Seriously.
Now, you've got to, and more importantly, integrating the strategies that we've collaborated around. And you've got to give credit what credit is due. They're in a hot market. They're doing a lot of great things themselves. But they made, and the leader of the organization made the conscious effort that they're going to become a lot more relationship-centric in their in business development, in their delivery, in their upsell, cross-sell opportunities, in their dissemination of intellectual property, and where they had a lot of less than socially networked habits in the past. In the last, like I said, couple of years, they've just become a lot more collaborative. They've become a lot more engaging, and it's directly, has benefited them in their revenue numbers and revenue targets.
Well, that's amazing.
Another client.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Absolutely, and it's also really interesting to see what you would perceive as a large. I mean, this is a massive company. So if you imagine a large organization where one champion, one executive, one, in this case, a national partner, had this vision, and when they heard about us, found out about us, got referred to us, said, "This is where I want to build this organization around." And we've trained, we're in the fourth year of training, their next generation of leaders. We are rolling out some really interesting tools and technologies for them to leverage. So they've really made it part of their DNA and not a Band-Aid, not a bucket, if you will.
If you don't take it serious, and if management doesn't have total buy-in, it's just not going to work.
That's exactly right. It becomes, flavor of the week or initiative of the week versus this really is going to become a transformational process for us, and I give a ton of credit, and the national partners actually endorsed the book, and I give them a ton of credit for really having the vision to say, and really the ability, the clout to say we're gonna really build, we're gonna grow, we're gonna scale this business, because if you think about it, a lot of professional service firms, it's in essence become a commoditized industry, right? You tell me you have really bright people, well, so do the other three firms.
Exactly.
And you tell me you've got these services, so do the other three firms. So in essence, your portfolio of relationships become your most valuable asset. It becomes that and only that which really sets you apart.
Wow.
Another really quick example is another client, Senior Vice President of Franchise Strategy and Operations for another large corporate client. She's had zero attrition outside the company in the last 2 years.
Really?
So she made the investment. She made the conscious investment that they were going to build an environment that will allow people to professionally grow, personally and professionally grow. They're going to, really engage them in the entire process. Again, a lot of companies talk about our people are our biggest asset. First sign of a troubled economy, they lay off a ton of people, right?
True.
Or we really want you to take care of our customers, but this is how your hands are tied in trying to solve those issues. Well, this executive, again, removed all those, integrated relationship currency, reputation capital, professional net worth, which is all really under the umbrella of relationship economics.
I love those three terms.
Into their DNA. Yeah, into their DNA, into their culture, and she's become the place everybody wants to go work. And her division has become the de facto place that you want to go and get a chance to work on some really cool projects and be around the sharpest kind of thinkers in the business. And again, they've done phenomenally well.
Jeez, those are great examples. Well, and lastly, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about your experiences with relationship economics? Anything else that you think might be helpful?
I opened up our conversation with the fact that I'm originally from Iran. Well, I was recently in Dubai and Bahrain, speaking in the Middle East. Before that, I was in Shanghai and Beijing and Hong Kong. Before that, in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And every international trip reiterates that the rest of the world builds relationships first, from which they do business. In many ways, now I consider myself an American. Unfortunately, as Americans, many of us are so focused on the business that if and only if the business part works, we'll think about building the relationships. Hence the disconnect with multicultural management teams. Hence the disconnect when we go into environments where they don't look like us, sound like us, or really come from our backgrounds. So I coach a lot of clients. Think of the individual nuances. Really focus the time, effort, resources on building and nurturing the relationship. And I have a mentor who reiterates this. Influence the conversation, you'll influence the relationship. Influence the relationship, and you'll influence the outcome that you're after.
Again, that's a good point, especially about working outside of the United States. We are kind of U.S.-centric, and when I had my international offices in London, Sweden, and Oslo, I noticed a significant difference, exactly what you were saying. It was about relationships first, business second.
And again, a simple analogy I use is the Arabic term bin. The literal translation is son of. So who your father was, your genealogy, how you got introduced to my office, what's our history together is a lot more important than any product or service you bring. And unfortunately, we still have Western companies who try to parachute in these other markets without investing in, without nurturing the relationship first. And then they wonder why their efforts weren't more fruitful, weren't more successful.
Great points. Geez, that's really great. So, David, can you please tell our listeners where they can find out more information about you, your company, and your book, Relationship Economics, Defining Business Acumen?
Sure. So again, our website is relationshipeconomics.net for the network for the relationships. You can also find additional resources on relationshipcurrency.com. But I would welcome you. There's a blog. There's a newsletter you can subscribe to. There's over 200 articles on the website and podcasts. And I'm a huge believer of advocating this passion, this message to anybody who will hear it. So there's a lot of great information, again, on relationshipeconomics.net or relationshipcurrency.com are their two websites. The book is also published by Wiley. It is called Relationship Economics, and the focus is how to transform your business contacts into personal and professional success.
David, that was awesome. I'd really like to thank David Nour, author of Relationship Economics, Defining Business Acumen, published by John Wiley & Sons, for being here today and for sharing his valuable insights with us all. This has been Lon Safko, the co-author of the Social Media Bible. Be sure to check out our other valuable social media tactics, tools, and strategies that can be found in the Social Media Bible book and at our companion website, www.thesocialmediabible.com. For more information about me, Lon Safko, or to learn how I can speak at your company or your next event, please visit my website at www.lonsafko.com. And again, thank you everyone for being with us here today.